the passengers, Flight 370 had been about as routine as a flight can get. The flight attendants were making their way through the cabin with a meal service for those who were still awake. However, most of the passengers were asleep by this point. What happened next is the subject of much controversy. For this video, we'll apply Occam's razor, which holds that the theory which requires the fewest assumptions is most likely to be the right one. The following account is not definitive, but it is the most consistent with the known facts, and it is supported by some of the world's leading authorities on the subject. At 19 minutes past 1, as Flight 370 neared the waypoint Agari, Malaysian Air Traffic Control told the crew to contact Ho Chi Minh Air Traffic Control, as they would soon be entering Vietnamese airspace.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Much has been made in the media of this radio transmission by the captain. That's because, technically, a pilot is also supposed to read back the radio frequency they've been assigned, so the controller knows that the pilot has heard them correctly. But pilots who know an airspace well, like Zahari did, sometimes don't read back the frequency. So there is truly nothing unusual about Zahari simply saying goodnight as he switched over to Ho Chi Minh. What is strange, however, is what happened next. And here is where our scenario begins. Just seconds after saying goodnight to Lumpur Control, Captain Zahari asked First Officer Farik to go back into the cabin and get them both a cup of coffee. They had 5 hours of night flying ahead of them. A shot of caffeine wouldn't go amiss. The first officer dutifully headed back to the galley and closed the cockpit door behind him. Normally, the cabin crew would bring the coffee, but Farik was not about to question the man who held his career in his hands. Now, sitting alone in the warm cocoon of the cockpit, was a man who had been rehearsing for this night for over a month. Every step, every movement had been planned with the utmost precision, and it had to be, because Zahari was trying to pull off the impossible. He would now try to make one of the world's largest, most modern jets vanish from the face of the earth. Safely locked behind his bulletproof cockpit door, ironically designed to keep would-be hijackers out, he could now carry out this plan without interruption. He reached back into his flight bag behind his seat, pulled out a warm sweater and put it on. He would be needing it in a moment. Zahari had chosen this exact moment to make the plane disappear because for these precious few minutes, nobody on the ground was expecting to hear from the aircraft. Malaysian controllers had handed him off to Vietnam, and Vietnamese controllers were busy with the aircraft which were already in their airspace. As far as they were concerned, it would be a few minutes before Flight 370 checked in. So, for these precious few moments, Flight 370 was in limbo. Nobody in the world was watching. Zahari's first step in making the plane vanish was to make it disappear from radar. To do this, he needed to turn off the plane's transponder. But he wasn't going to do this straight away. If he did it before he reached Agari, Malaysian Air Traffic Control might notice him dropping off their radar screens. If he waited until he had reached the waypoint, he would truly be out of their jurisdiction. As the first officer obliviously fixed a coffee in the forward galley, or whatever counted for coffee on an aircraft, Zahari fixed his eyes on Agari, as it inched ever closer at 8 miles per minute. When the active waypoint at the top right of this screen here changed from Agari to Bitad, the next waypoint en route, that would be his trigger to turn off the transponder. And after a few moments, it came. The aircraft reached Agari and began turning towards its next waypoint. At exactly that moment, Zahari switched off the transponder. Flight 370 disappeared from air traffic control screens in Malaysia.